All right, cool. Hi, everyone. That's exactly what I like to hear. Thank you. So real quick, I have a few questions for you before we get started. First off, how many people in this room are recording me? Don't lie. It's OK. I just want to know. All right, good. So I'll look good in this angle only. But feel free to, didn't we say that? The pictures are OK in this room, so go ahead and G+ your hearts out. Just keep it on silent. So I'm going to be talking about Google+ and the +1 button. I'm Timothy. I'm a developer advocate here at Google, and you can find me online, and I encourage you to do so. Let's chat. TimothyJordan.com/plus will redirect to my Google+ profile. You can follow me and @mention me, and we'll talk about all sorts of stuff. So today we're going to talk about the Google+ project. I mean, we're really going to talk about people, right? We're going to talk about people through the Google+ project. We're going to talk about people through the +1 button. We're going to talk about people who happen to be authors. And then hopefully we'll also talk a lot about you. This is going to be an interactive session. You expected that, right?
Yes.
Who said yes?
Awesome. Yes.
I've brought bait. Stickers and +1 buttons. And you get them if for some arbitrary reason I think you're awesome. All right, so let's jump in. The Google+ project. Who here in the room has a Google+ account? Oh, this is going to be easy. So you already know. But let me just sort of reiterate some of the core principles here, because I think they're interesting, and I'd like to talk to you about them. So since everybody here is an expert, maybe you can tell me some things. First off, the Google+ project is really based in our core philosophy. We focus on the user. And the user has changed, right? So we figured we ought to as well, and we introduced the Google+ project. And we're just getting started. There's a number of things about the Google+ project that make it unique and beautiful and are one of the many reasons I love working on it. The first of is circles. You know a lot of people, but you don't treat them all the same, right? You have your friends, you have your colleagues, you have your classmates, you have the people that you met here that aren't really friends or aren't really acquaintances yet, but you want them to think that you think they're important. So you can have that circle. It's a long name, but it's possible. Right? And you can share with them specifically. And you know what? You're going to want to share something with them that you might not want to share with your family directly. Or you might want to share something publicly that you don't want to share individually one-on-one. Or you might want to share something with your family that you don't with the public. I mean, there's so many options. And circles are versatile and easy. And I think they're really great. Who here shares frequently to circles and not publicly? All right. And who here only shares publicly? All right. So the people that didn't raise their hand, I'm confused about you. But we'll build up our logic mechanism over the talk. So.
Busy in Facebook.
She doesn't get one.
I know she said something, but I couldn't quite hear her. Yeah, you better strap in. It's going to be a long talk. All right, so I use circles a lot. And I think one of my go-to examples is that I actually use circles to share directly with my friends and family on a daily basis. I post a daily photo, which I used to do to the world, which was, you know, kind of fun. But the world doesn't really want to see a daily photo about me. But when I talk to my uncle, he loves seeing the different places that I'm at and that I'm talking and the different things that I'm doing. And it's cool to share that with him. But not everybody else wants to see a daily photo, and it restricted me. I wasn't sharing every day because I didn't want to take that picture and share it with the world. But when I take that picture and I just share it with my friends, my good friends, my actual friends, and my family, then that made it okay, and I was doing it a lot more, and I think that's really cool. Sparks. Good discussions are sparked by good content. That just makes sense. So we made a mechanism here that allows you to surface content to yourself and share it with your circles conveniently. And this was actually really great for me recently. I have a friend who has an illness, and there was a new treatment that came out about it, and I was able to share that right away and have a conversation with them. And I mean, it's just putting in that interest that I wouldn't necessarily search for every day, but that I would like to know updates about and have conversations about is really cool. Who here uses Sparks? Somewhat? Somewhat a few people use Sparks. All right, Hangouts. Hangouts are really cool, right? When we interact face-to-face, that's important. That's why you're here, right? You probably could have seen me post some stuff online or watch this video later, but you wanted to be here so that we could talk face-to-face, so that we could have a question and answer period after time, or so that I could give you cool swag, right? There's so much to be said for this interaction, which is really neat. And we wanted to enable that online, but the way video conferencing works is that it's either difficult to set up and confusing and complicated, or it's one-on-one, or it's by some sort of schedule. But if you just want to hang out with somebody, you don't want to do all that work, right? I grew up in a small town, and one of my favorite hobbies, and you might think I'm boring because of this, is I like to sit on a porch. It was just really fun to hang out on a porch in my hometown. It was small enough that people would walk by, my friends and my family, and we could have conversations. And you know what? That's what a hangout is for me, is that ability to be like, hey, I'm out on my porch. Why don't you come say hi? And people actually do, but we can do it at a global scale. That's a big porch. I think that's really cool. And the almost last thing I want to talk about is mobile, is that life doesn't happen here in front of my laptop. And it doesn't happen on my desktop at home. And in fact, I like to leave those things at home and go out and experience life. But while I'm there, there might be something I want to share, or I want to connect with somebody who lives in Florida and I never get to see, but this reminded me of them. And so we made a really great mobile experience that allows you to share so easily, right? With things like notifications and instant upload, it just makes it such a wonderful experience. No. There's lots to work on. The last thing, and this is a feature. This is you, right? The Google Plus project is about you, and it's about hearing what you have to say. We're in field trial, after all. And it's about you getting started and you giving us your feedback. And it's also about the bigger picture, right? Connecting humanity to share in a way that we haven't been able to do before, in a way that we naturally already do in real life, and taking that paradigm and putting it online. So it's not this strange artifice that gets in the way. It's just a conduit to connecting to the people who we love and care about. Real quick. Who here grew up in Silicon Valley? Who grew up in California? Who grew up in the United States? Who grew up outside this country? Who here was in a different country 3 days ago? Go around the room, right? This is a global community. When we restrict it to this space, it doesn't work anymore. But when we restrict it to online, as long as you schedule it, or everybody's a friend, or you can follow, but maybe I'll never talk to you. What's that? This is about taking this experience and putting it online. I think that's pretty neat. There's some amazing uses of Google Plus that we've seen already, too, that I'd like to mention. And I'd like to hear some from you. Some of my top picks is I went to a Google Plus concert with Daria Musk, right? And I was at my house in Bonnie Doon in the middle of the redwoods, and we logged online, and we were able to hang out with her, and she sang a few songs. And then over the course of 6 hours, she held a concert for the world. There's a Google Plus cooking school. Did you know this? Right? I think there's actually a few of them. And there's these amazing photo communities that are popping up. I mean, you get Chris Chabot and Trey Radcliffe doing photo walks here, and then people are doing photo walks elsewhere, but they're having the same experience, and that's really neat. I'd like to take a moment before I move on, because we're going to get into programming really quick, and I don't know that we've had our dose of humanity just yet. Do you have a really cool experience that you've had on Google Plus that you'd like to share? Just a few of them right here. And it has to be 5 sentences or less. I've been to one of these before. Come on up.
I walked into my living room, and my house guest was in the middle of a hangout, and I got to meet a lot of his friends who it turned out I already knew, because I was hanging out in the background of the hangout, and it was why open up my computer when he had his?
Awesome. And that's the thing, is that it spans from like charity stuff to meeting old friends or new people to just the casual walking into a living room. Like, this tool is so versatile and so special. And I encourage you to think about that. Think about how have you been able to interact online that you couldn't do before? And do more of that. That's cool. All right. So there are a lot of things we can do on Google+. And first and foremost, be a user. You've all got that covered, right? Next step is to add this to your website and spread this across the internet and plug into the Google+ project and plug into how Google is adding people. And that's the +1 button. So we're going to spend a bunch of time on this too. This is the Silicon Valley Google Technology User Group. So I've been told there's a fair amount of developers here. You don't have to raise your hand if it gets weird. But I know my people. You're out there. So I'm going to talk about the +1 button and what it does right now. And we're going to go into some basic implementation. And we're going to look at some code. And we're going to do some best practices, as well as look at some really cool stuff that I think you can do with the button that people are just starting to figure out. So first off, the button is available on search. And it's been available there for a long time. Right? And this is sort of one of the core values of the button, is being able to see recommendations from your friends when it matters most, when you're searching for something, when you're looking for something, right? It doesn't always matter what your friends say in the stream. Not always. It can be really cool when you're spending time in the stream, but when you're looking for a bed frame, right? You need to know what your friends have recommended. And it's really helpful that when you search for it, their recommendations are there right in front of you. And the +1 button, all you have to do is click on it. And that recommendation at the bottom goes from including just a couple people you know to you as well. And everybody you know has the opportunity to see that public action that you've made. It's also available on ads. And of course, we wanted to make this available outside of search. It's neat to be able to +1, say, a restaurant you already know you love in search. But what if you don't know if you like the article you're about to read just yet? You might want to go to that page first. Yeah? In this case, I'm landing on a movie website. This is Harry Potter. Who's seen it? Yeah, nice. There's only a handful of us, but we have wands. So when you click on this, or when you hover over this button on the page, you'll see those annotations in that hover bubble as well. And we just released a way for you to show this annotation inline on the page, so that when you're about to start to read an article or a review, you already know if your boss has read that article, and you better bone up before your next meeting. Once you decide to click on it, it'll give you an option to share on Google+. And I think this is really cool. Once you click inside there, it will bring up a field, much like the share box that you see on Google+ in the stream. It has an opportunity for you to type some stuff in. It has a snippet that's defined by the publisher, and we're going to talk about that. It's really cool. And it has your circles. Right? You can define the circles you want to share this with. So you can go ahead and type that in, and you can go ahead and share with your circles. Of course, I would share with the witches and wizards, of which there are 4 in this room. And the really cool thing about this is that we've got a button in 3 places now, right? And I can maybe click it in an organic result, and then somebody might click it in a search ad, a paid listing, and somebody might click it on your site. But they all go to the same annotation, the same bucket of +1s, the same recommendations in search. So you spread these +1 buttons out, you get your users to click them, and then it matters to their friends and family when they see it in search. And this is true, right? 9 out of 10 people trust recommendations from people they know, which is sort of an obvious statistic, but it looks better when it's blue and with the % sign. 7 out of 10 people trust recommendations from family members or friends. They say those influence their purchase decisions, right? And 2 out of 3 people share content, are more likely to share content within one of their circles than to make a general or public post. And we actually almost got to that in this room, which is surprising, because I would venture a guess that most of the people in this room are very post and public information happy. You're posting to your networks a lot, updating them on different things. That's why you come to these meetings and get updated on the latest information. But even in here, there was maybe a quarter of you that said you shared significantly to circles rather than public. That's really interesting, right? So being able to share from any website directly to your circles is really interesting. All right, and so that's pretty much it, the +1 button. It can help you with CTR on search. The search traffic is pre-qualified, and it comes with a recommendation, and you can share directly to the Google Plus project with your circles. So let's take a look at how you actually implement it. We have this really fancy configuration tool. It's a form, but you can copy the code from there and paste it into your page, and you have a button right away. So I recommend you take a look at this page if you're starting out, or if at any point you want to learn a little bit more about the markup. As you change the form, the code updates for you. So it's a really good educational tool as well. You get to kind of see how things change as you change the language parameter or whatever. The code itself is very simple. We have just a script tag. It's right up there at the top, including the JavaScript for the +1 button and the +1 tag, which is actually where the button is going to be rendered. Here is an example page, which is super basic. It would work. It would be kind of silly, but it would totally work. But it helps me illustrate this point right up here, which is the rel canonical. And this is important, right? Who knows about canonicalization for their pages and for Google search? Ooh, this is good. I got to tell you something new. Canonicalization is really important. Let's say you've got 3 different pages or 3 different URLs that post to the same, or point to the same content. And this is something that really could happen, right? I'm going to go over to the screen. So I'm going to shout while I do that. If you look at this URL up here, you see the question mark, order by equals price. This is a variable on the URL that could happen when a user is modifying the page and say your CMS requires this to know how to render the products on the page. But that's in the document.location.href. That is the URL of the page, even though that has nothing to do with the content. What canonicalization allows you to do is say, OK, maybe I have a user ID parameter on the URL. Maybe I have a sort by. But none of that actually means the content. The true URL is this, right? And it's great for Google search, because then we know what to point the search to as we crawl your pages. It's also good for the +1 button, because if the +1 button sees these as 3 different URLs, you're going to get 1 click on each one of those URLs if, say, a user clicks on each one of them, right? But what you actually want is each one of those 3 users to click and have it go to the same +1 bucket, right? The same series of annotations. And hopefully that's also the URL that Google search sees as the canonicalization. And you can control this. You can have effect on this by setting the rel equals canonical. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And of course, we've got the +1 button code in there as well. The other thing I wanted to mention about markup on your page is what drives this plus snippet. And this is really cool, because if you share something into your stream that's rich, that's full of information, it's more likely to start conversation. It's more likely to be interesting to your friends and family. It's more likely to make it easier for you to engage with these people. So we want publishers, and that may be you, to mark up their pages. You don't have to add content. You just have to identify the content that's already there. And there's 4 ways that you can do that. Well, 3 ways, and then 1 feeling lucky. The ways are schema.org markup, which you may know, and I'll talk more about, Open Graph, using meta tags, and then, of course, the last way we may look at this is kind of our best guess. And it'll happen in that order, right? If we see schema.org, we'll use that. And if we don't see schema, but we see Open Graph, we'll use that. If we don't see Open Graph and we see meta, we'll use that. And if not, then Google will do its best to determine what the best description and title and image on your page are going to be. But my guess is you'd rather have control over that, right? So schema.org is what I'm going to talk about, and there's a few reasons. One, it's supported by all the major search engines, right? So you've got Google, Bing, and Yahoo, who are all supporting schema.org. The other thing is that you might already be using it. There's these things called rich snippets that are really kind of cool. I like stuffing. So when you search for stuffing, you might get a whole bunch of recipes on the page. And this recipe has a review and it has a description. And that is set by a rich snippet markup on the page. And you can do this with schema.org. The base type of schema is thing, which already requires to have a name, description, and image. And so you're already set for the plus snippet because what it requires are a name, a description, and an image. And they set these items on the page. And then we throw in a fave icon just for fun. All right, so I just wanted to show you another basic page because I like vaporous examples. And this one, what I've done is I've just highlighted the schema.org markup. And you'll see this is just a regular page. I haven't altered the content at all. I just added an item scope, for one, an item type, and then I have some item props. Now, this is what they are. The item scope gets placed at your parent tag. All right? All the item props have to be children of that tag. So that could be HTML if you really want to play it easy, or it could be body, also really easy, or it could be a div tag maybe, and then under that div tag, enclosed in that div tag, you keep all your item props. That's okay too. The item type designates what type this is. Now I've thrown up a pretty generic type, and this is going to be common on a lot of news sites, article, but it might not be common on your site. And you go to schema.org and you can see all the different types available, the taxonomy between them, and you can choose what's right for your page. Maybe you have a business, right, or a local business, or an organization, right, or a video, something like that. And you can set the right type so that Google knows what the type of the page is. And then we have the 3 item types. There's name, description, and image. And you can see those tags are just parents of the actual content. So in the title, we've added the item prop name. And in a span, we've added item prop description. And in that span is what we use as the description. Does that make sense? I've learned to take silence as an overwhelming yes. So I'll move on. So best practices. All right, now we're going to start and get into some interesting stuff here and some really cool stuff. First off, pretty basic. +1s are for URLs, and it has to be a public crawlable URL. So for those of you that have staging servers, what you would want to do is set your rel canonical to the public equivalent of the page, and then the button would actually work. If you set it to your staging server, which can't be reached by Google, when they click that button, you'll probably get a red button with a white exclamation mark. It's not going to work. And remember to set the URL of the button. There's an edge case here, or if you have a blog homepage, say, and you have links to different articles on that homepage, it would be common for you to maybe put a +1 button by each one. But you want that button to link to the article, not the page they're on with all the buttons, right? To do that, you set an attribute on the button tag, href. Pretty straightforward. And then, of course, if you don't have the href, if it's just the page that you're on, we really recommend you use the rel canonical link in your head. And this is how we look at it. First, we look for the href, and if we don't find that, we go to the rel canonical. And if we don't find that, we go to the URL of the page, document.location.href. More best practices, speed. This is one we gave you for free. Speed is really important to us, and we know from feedback over many years that speed is really important to you as well. So we made the button faster. And there's nothing you need to do. It's up to 3 times faster since we launched, and we just did that because we want that button to render really fast. If you want it to render even faster, and maybe you want it to render outside the rendering of your page, you can use the async snippet. And what that'll do is your page will start loading, and the button will load in parallel, but it won't block any other assets. All right, here's an interesting one. We're getting into the stuff that's sort of new and people are starting to do on their pages. The easy example here is retail. Retail would put a +1 button on a product page. That's really common, and that makes sense, is that users are searching for products. I like this microwave. I'm going to +1 that. But what if you like all the microwave selection at Best Buy? It makes sense to put a +1 button at the category level as well. Yeah? And people might search for that. What if you like all the electronics at Best Buy? It makes sense to put a +1 button at the brand level as well. People might also search for that. Any page that you might search for, it makes sense to put a +1 button. And this is how we see some people using it. And they'll put that brand level near a logo or on their homepage, and sometimes they'll even add promo, like Mashable did here. And this is great because when I search for technology news and Mashable comes up there, I see all the recommendations from my friends who read Mashable regularly. All right, this is fun, and I actually have a demo in here. This is Callback. The button actually has a callback. So when a user clicks it, we can run a JavaScript function on your page. And we'll tell it a few things. One, we'll tell it the URL that was +1, and whether it was +1 or un+1. Right? So if you have multiple buttons, you'll know which one it was hit, and you'll know whether the user clicked it or whether the user unclicked it. Yeah? Like they undid their +1 action. And this is really great because you can use it to increase the value of the +1 button to your users on the page. And this is how you might want to do it. Let's say I'm on a page and I'm looking at a really cool hat, something like this, and I +1 that. It would be a really great experience for me if I saw similar hats on the same site come up. Yeah? Maybe I have an uncluttered experience, but as soon as I +1 that, I see all these related hats. Or even over time, let's say I'm always reading technology articles on a news site, and I'm always +1ing those. Wouldn't it be cool if I landed on that news homepage and I saw the latest technology articles? It's quicker and easier for me to get to the content that I want, and it increases value on that page. So this is the example. It's a frog, because I think frogs are cute. The way this works is I just coded this up, and we're going to look at the code so you know how the callback works and how you might be able to use it. What I'm doing here is I'm just throwing a keyword at the Flickr API. I thought it might be neat to see how this works across different services. And the Flickr API, I'm searching here for happy, I think, and it's giving me this happy green frog. When I +1, what the code is doing is it's taking the title of this particular image, not my original keyword, throwing it back at the Flickr API and getting all those images from that title as keywords. So it's pretty basic. I just threw it together today to demonstrate this functionality. So let me go to the demo. So when I put in happy, the first thing that comes up is a happy Buddha. I think it's a really cool photo. And I click +1 on this. And you'll see it takes the title from that image and then just loads up a whole bunch of images. Now this is really basic. Obviously, this is not sexy UI. But what this does demonstrate is from user action, you can modify in-page behavior, and you can store that over time. Let's look a little bit at the code. All right, so that's a lot of code, but I'll make it simple. So up at the top, I'm just doing a JSON call. I'm using jQuery here to grab some data from Flickr. And you'll see there by text is a variable for search, and it just has the keyword happy in it. And then down here is the callback function. So once I get all those photos, I go ahead and load them all up. And that includes rendering a +1 button that actually has the URL of that image page. Right? So when we +1 this, we're actually +1ing the page for that image on Flickr, which is pretty neat. And then this is the callback. You'll notice in here I've actually set the callback to be +1 callback. And I've set this using the JavaScript API, but I could also add a callback if I use the tag in HTML. And so this callback does something really similar. It gets the event, and it grabs the current title. You'll notice up there at the text, it's setting the title of the current photo to be the keyword to search for, and it's grabbing all those images and adding them as thumbnails. So I'll post this code soon. Yeah. All right, so moving past, and like I said, I'll post that code on my stream sometime in the next few days or week. All right, so let's talk about analytics. All right, you're going to maybe change the button on your page, where you place it, or you're going to add some callback functionality to increase value for the user, and you're going to want to track that over time. So there's a couple different ways you can do that with analytics. One of them is through Webmaster Tools. And what this is going to tell you is about the +1 CTR on search. It's going to tell you about who's +1ing your content. And this is aggregate data, right? So where the bulk of users are from in the world, that kind of thing. And it'll start to show up over time. And I'll take a look at some screenshots in a moment. And also on Google Analytics, that'll tell you about how users interact with plugins, not just the +1 button on your site. So this is the Webmaster Tools. And this is a mock of showing +1 button activity. We also got a mock of showing the change in CTR, right? So it's +12%, which is pretty cool. It's an example, so don't get your hopes up. But it'll tell you right there when users see the annotation on search, how does it affect their decision to click? If you're getting a lift in CTR, that's positive, and that's important. And then, of course, we have some demographic data. We're going to tell you a little bit about the types of users you have and where they're from. And again, this data shows up after we have enough data that it's anonymous. And we also have Google Analytics, which is great for telling how users engage with the social plugins on your site and interact with the rest of your content. Like how much time do they spend, how many pages do they view, and you can report on this in the way that you do with Google Analytics. It's very cool. There's a couple other screenshots. And I recommend you take a look at this, right? And you get this for free. When you install the button, after about an hour, you're going to be able to see +1 data in both of these tools. And then if you want to add in data for other social plugins, you just need to add some really simple code to your page. That's analytics. All right. We've gone through Google+ and the +1 button. And now we're going to take a look at a little something extra for authors, because authors are people too. So authorship is really interesting, right? Because when you write an article, you have a byline, and you want people to know that you wrote that. And then you might also share that on Google+. And it would be also very great if when you're on Google Search and you search for an article and an author you know has written it, that you could see their face, that you could see their profile photo right there on search, and that's what we've started doing. It's a really simple feature, but you can see how it's really powerful in search when you see that photo of any one of these people. And like, I want to read an article by them. And how you do it is really simple. So the implementation is very straightforward. First, if you've got a site with authors and you've got a new site or you work on one, you just need to ask the authors to create a Google profile. Make sure the +1 tab is visible on their profile, and the links section of the profile should list your site and the other site that the author contributes to. More on that in a second. Also on your site, you want to associate the content they've written with their profile. A straightforward way to do this, you just use rel equals author. Now, for those of you who've done this before, it's really easy. It's just an attribute that you add to the link tag that goes to the profile. If for some reason your CMS makes that difficult, or if it's just difficult for some other reason, you can add a question mark rel equals author at the end of the URL. This way you can just add a regular link without having to add extra attributes. Either one of those things will provide a link from that content to their profile, and their profile already links to your site. So we have a bidirectional verification that they own that content. Pretty cool, huh? And then we can surface that in search. All right, so we've looked at Google+, +1 button, and best practices, and we've looked at authors, and that's kind of a lot. So at this point, I'd like to go to the question and answer. And let's have some questions and answers in 1 second. And then once we're done with that, let's just hang out for a little while, yeah? I'll be around if you want to ask questions one-on-one, or if you want to high five because this world is just so cool, we can do that too. Before you actually ask your questions, I do want to emphasize that today we're talking about what we have now, right? And I'm really interested in hearing all about the ways that we think Google Plus can improve. We want that feedback, and you can tell me today, and I'll listen, and we'll record it on the stream, and we'll talk about it internally. Another great way to do that is just talk about it on the stream, and plus mention me or your community manager, Natalie, or Chris Chabot, or anyone on our team. Another way is to hit that feedback tool. We read those. Those are really important to us. So give us feedback in all these different ways. This is just one forum to do so. But again, I'm not going to talk about anything that we haven't yet released. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about it if you want to tell them to me. All right? And for every question, and as long as these stickers and buttons last, you'll get one. A little more about Huddle?
Yeah.
Sure. I think Huddle's awesome. Huddle is that way to communicate on the phone. And it's kind of like text messaging, but way cooler. Right? You can have group text messaging with your friends. And I'm actually using this. This is actually really neat. As I can't get my father to do text messaging, but I sent a message to him via Huddle the other day, and it showed up in his notifications, and he responded. It was ridiculous. I don't know how that works, but now I can use that form of communication with him. I think another way that it works really cool that I've noticed and users have told us is, like, let's say you're going to an event like a music festival, and then you start a Huddle at the beginning of the day, and then when you inevitably all get lost, you can all stay in touch, right? And that's really neat too. That's interesting to know. Okay, so the portion of the question that I'll repeat is that this gentleman has a number of users that he's friends with, your friends that you've brought into Google+, and they don't seem to be producing content. Right? You're not seeing things coming from their streams, and you want to get them more involved. And obviously you do, because Google+ is so cool, and if everybody could start trying to use it, then that would be great. Well, I think that there's sort of a couple steps to really getting your friends and family on the stream. And anybody else who wants to share tips for this, I encourage you to do so. But the first step you've already done. You've gotten them on, which is great. So they're on there, and they can read your content. And that's step one. I have a friend who his secret weapon is Hangouts. Like if his family is like, nah, I don't know about this Google+ thing, and he's like, I'll tell you what, go online around 7 o'clock tonight and look for my post. And then they join a Hangout, and that's just it, right? Hangouts are so magical, especially the first time that you see them. That was a phone ring. So I think that's another step, is expose your friends to parts of Google+ that you feel passionately about. And the third step that's really worked for me is that when I write cool content directed at them, they respond. They add comments. And after they do that for a while and they see the value, they're also writing their own posts. So engage with them, right? Bring them into the product and start talking with them. All right, I think we have somebody on our Hangout. Let me see if I can make it louder and through the microphone. Hello?
Hello?
Well, there's a whole bunch of you. I just got to know, what part of the country are you in?
We're like 3 hours away.
Okay. Is it really warm there? Here, hold on. Let me point you at the world. Just so you know, everybody's watching you.
Yeah, everybody.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. So do you have a question?
Do we get stickers?
So I'll talk to Van about that. We'll see if we can send you some.
Okay, my question is this app to improve and quite possibly to replace Facebook and all other social networking systems?
The question was, is this app, and I believe he means Google+, is Google+ intended to replace all other social networks out there? And I responded as I started, is that I actually addressed this at the beginning of the slideshow, and what's important to us is focusing on the user, right? I know that there's lots of similar ways to do similar things online and offline, but what's important to us is just doing the right way for the user, yeah? And so that's why we implemented circles in particular, and that's why we built this product, and that's why we've been extending that across Google, and that's why we're focusing on the users in such a way. Hello.
Since he said, hey, what do you think?
Yes. Okay. There's all these things happening. And I think that's important, and that's what's interesting, is that is not so much what else is out there, but is this working? And is there something that we could do to improve that you could give us feedback on? I mean, we're in field trial, and this is just the beginning. Right now, we're just making a great experience for our users. So let me just leave you on something, is that one thing that is really clear by the question and answer period is this, and it's a bit more of a serious note than our last question, but I think this is important, is that every one of these questions or pieces of feedback, you've talked about your experience and what you're doing. And then we've even had some responses like, look, that's not available as a feature, but you can do this other thing. And I think that's really interesting. And you, as part of this technology user group, you're at the forefront of playing with this new technology and playing around with Google Plus while we're in our field trial. And I really encourage you to continue to do so and keep giving us your feedback. As you can see, we've taken feedback and made product changes directly from that, and we're going to continue to do that. So please keep letting us know everything that works well for you and everything that you'd like to see improve. And don't forget to log on and hang out. Thank you so much.